嘿 Hello kids， 这个是这个国家地理杂志有关于种族问题的特别报道的第二个部分。那么上一次我说了，我们读的呢还不是这些精彩的有关于种族问题的这些故事，而是这本杂志对于种族问题自己的一个检讨。那么我上一次读到的部分是这个地方，所以我们现在从这里再开始。Okay. Some of what you find in our archives leaves you speechless. 他们在他们的自己的过去的记录里面找到的是很恐怖的哈。Like a 1916 story about Australia. Underneath photos of two Aboriginal people, the caption reads, South Australian blackfellows. These savages rank lowest in intelligence of all human beings. 我的天哪，他指的就是这两个人。他就说呢，这个解释这张照片的就说 South Australian blackfellows， 南澳洲的黑人。他说这些 savages 是野蛮人呢的智商是所有的人类里面最低的。这个居然是国家地理杂志会说的话哈。Questions arise not just from what's in the magazine, but what isn't. Mason compared two stories we did about South Africa, one in 1962, the other in 1977. The 1962 story was printed 2.5 years after the massacre of 69 black South Africans by police in Sharpeville, many shot in the back as they fled. The brutality of the killings shocked the world. 那么这个 Mason 呢就比较了两篇报道有关于南非的文章，一个是1962，一个是1977。National Geographic story barely mentions any problems， 根本就没有提到有任何问题。Mason said， 这个应该是指1962年那一篇。There are no voices of black South Africans. That absence is as important as what is in there. The only black people are doing exotic dances, servants, or workers. It's bizarre, actually, to consider that the editors, writers, and photographers had to consciously not see. 他说国家地理上的根本就提都不提，虽然是那个大屠杀，69个年轻的南非的人被白人的警察杀掉，虽然是2年半之后，但是根本就没有做任何，根本提都不提。Contrast that with the piece in 1977. In the wake of the U.S. Civil Rights era, it's not a perfect article, but it acknowledges the oppression, Mason said. Black people are pictured.Opposition leaders are pictured. It's a very different article. 到了1977年啦，可能就改变了，因为在那个时候，美国自己的这个 civil rights 人权主义呢，黑人争取民权，也是一个很重要的一个发展，所以杂志就开始改变了。他讲的应该是不知道是哪一张图。Okay. Fast forward to a 2015 story about Haiti, when we gave cameras to young Haitians and asked them to document the reality of their world. The images by Haitians are really, really important, Mason said, and would have been unthinkable in our past. So would our coverage now of ethnic and religious conflicts, evolving gender norms,and the realities of today's Africa, and much more. 到了2015年呢，这个杂志已经非常积极的去讨论所有的社会问题了哈，所有的种族、宗教，还有社会问题，还有这个两性关系的问题。The realities of today's Africa， 非洲现在的状况 ，and much more。 Mason also uncovered a string of oddities, photos of the native person fascinated by Western technology. It really creates this us and them dichotomy between the civilized and the uncivilized. And then there's the access of pictures of beautiful Pacific Island women. Mason 也发现这个 a string of oddities uncovered， 发现一系列的很怪的事情。Photos of native persons fascinated by Western technology， 就是好像这些很不文明的人对于现代的文明非常有兴趣，感到很好奇。这张照片就是这个，你看这些土人对于现代的这个照相机感到非常有兴趣。而且呢，而且这个杂志里面呢特别强调很漂亮的、很有特色的 Pacific Island women. If I were talking to my students about the period until after the 1960s, I would say, be cautious about what you think you're learning here, he said. At the same time, you acknowledge the strengths National Geographic had even in that period, to take people out into the world to see things we've never seen before. It's possible to say that a magazine can open people's eyes. At the same time, it closes them. April 4th marks the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. It's a worthy moment to step back, to take stock of where we are on race. It's also a conversation that is changing in real time. In 2 years, for the first time in U.S. history, less than half the children in the nation will be white. So let's talk about what's working when it comes to race and what isn't. Let's examine why we continue to segregate along racial lines and how we can build inclusive communities. Let's confront today's shameful use of racism as a political strategy and prove we are better than this. 他就说4月4号呢 marks the 50th anniversary. 这个马丁路德金呢被暗杀的50个周年，就是2018年的4月4号。It's a worthy moment. 这个时刻呢，这是很恰当的时刻，去退后一步 ，to take stock。我们仔细想一想，我们现在在这个种族的议题上呢，现在的状况是怎么样 ？Where we are on race. In 2 years, for the first time in U.S. history. 再过2年，在美国历史上第一次，所有的小朋友 less than half the children in the nation will be white， 低于一半的小朋友在这个国家会是白人。这个 demographics 很快就会改变那么 let's examine why we continue to segregate along racial lines and how we can build more inclusive communities. Let's examine， 我们来检视一下，为什么我们持续的在 segregate along racial lines， 根据种族族群来做切割跟判断，我们是怎么样才能够 build inclusive communities？ 那么，我有一个电话，而且最重要的就是说呢。Let's confront today's shameful use of racism as a political strategy. 这个就是在讲 Donald Trump。我们一定要去面对，一定要去反抗这个很不要脸的一个利用种族问题来达到政治目的，利用族群作为一个政治的武器。And prove we are better than this. For us, this issue also provided an opportunity to look at our own efforts to illuminate the human journey, a core part of our mission for 130 years. I want a future editor of National Geographic to look back at our coverage with pride, not only about the stories we decided to tell, and how we told them, but about the diverse group of writers, editors, and photographers behind the work. We hope you will join us in this exploration of race, beginning this month and continuing throughout the year. Sometimes these stories, like parts of our own history, are not easy to read. But as Michelle Norris writes in this issue, it's hard for an individual or a country to evolve past discomfort if the source of the anxiety is only discussed in hushed tones. 最后这些，我相信你们自己都听得懂了。那么比较重要的是exploration of race， 我们一起来探讨种族的问题。他就说这个月开始呢，一系列的这个报道都是跟族群有关。但是呢 Michelle Norris 在这一期里面也写了一个故事。It's hard for a country to evolve past discomfort. 一定要脱离很不舒服的概念，因为种族问题面对任何问题都是很不舒服的。If the source of anxiety is only discussed in hushed tones. 如果大家都讲悄悄话，都不敢讨论真正的问题，那么我们就没有办法 evolve past discomfort. OK， 这个话题有点严肃，但是呢，国家地理还是非常不错的。OK，I will see you next time. Later.